Let's start with this though. Are you familiar with the $1.50 Costco hot dog? One of the greatest value meals you can buy in this world. The Costco hot dog is so iconic for its $1.50 price that has remained stable through years of inflation. It's considered a huge core marketing tenet of the Costco brand. Gets people in the door. The Costco co-founder once famously said, "I will kill you," to the new CEO who wanted to hike the price. You can't hike the price. Flashback to 2022. It was the height of inflation. The 21 inflation had been raging. Food prices were rising rapidly. And a tweet came out of nowhere from an account who at the time was called Breaking News 911, but is now called John W. Rich Kid. And they said, breaking! Costco announces plans to raise food court hot dog prices by $1 due to inflation. And the world panicked! The Costco hot dog was about to spike in price. The House GOP official account said Bidenflation comes for everything and quote retweeted it. This gave it a boost, so it started to get picked up by news outlets. Verified accounts from all over started jumping in. Okay, no joke, I'm starting to panic. Costco raising hot dog prices. Costco announces plans to raise food court prices. This is one of those inflation headlines people will absolutely notice. Costco's cheap hot dog and soda has been a staple for years. Costco's 30-plus year run of a hot dog with a soft drink for $1.50 finally comes to an end. In not even one day, I think 1 hour, the Costco stock price plummeted by, I think, roughly something like $30 billion. Everyone was like, this is the end of the company. And it became soon realized by those who fact-checked that this was not true. It had all been made up by one guy simply tweeting bullshit. But the real damage had been done, at least temporarily. $32 billion of market value had been lost because of one guy's meme. It was a signifier in 2022 of the era of fast-moving information and how misinformation could really move markets relatively quickly. They interviewed the guy, John W. Rich Kid. He said, yeah, I just randomly decided to post it. There was no rhyme or reason. And if anyone did even 2 seconds of research, they should know that. But kind of show what we already know. Nobody verifies anything and just reads headlines. Sad state of our society. That was probably one of the biggest market movements from a fake tweet we've ever had until today. Enter Walter Bloomberg. Walter Bloomberg does not work for Bloomberg. He's just a guy who made his name Walter Bloomberg. But he's verified because he paid the $8 a month. Now, he does tweet news regularly. In fact, I've figured out that his 849K followers comes from the fact that he basically goes to paywalled news websites, rips the headline, and then tweets it. So that you're getting access to the headlines without paying. But to some people, he's become Bloomberg. Now, I was out late at night at a Magic the Gathering event playing card game. Very cool Chad behavior. And while I was playing, I heard someone across the table from me in a different game say, oh shit, looking at their phone. And I was like, what? And he's like, bro, the Japanese markets just opened. They're in free fall. They just pulled the circuit breakers. Now, in Japan, it's kind of a cool thing they do. When the stocks are down, they make them green. It kind of makes you feel better about a bad day. A circuit breaker is when the stock market drops more than 8% in a short period of time. They basically stop all trading to let everyone catch their breath and figure out what the fuck's going on. So there's not a panic that goes deep selling. And it was happening not only in Japan, but in many Southeast Asian countries. Every country was basically waking up and seeing their markets crash. And I was thinking, oh shit, that's a pretty bad sign for tomorrow. And I think a large part of it obviously had to do with the tariffs. There was deep drops on Friday. The tariffs had not let up, and the markets were, again, digesting that the tariffs were going to be pretty bad for the global economy. Trump was still tweeting that he was solid on these tariffs. They're going to bring in tens of billions of dollars. Someday people will realize the tariffs for the United States of America are a very beautiful thing. He was rock solid on the tariffs. And so the markets were getting more and more panicked. And then enter our good friend Walter Bloomberg. The markets open blood red in America, similar to Japan, similar to Taiwan, multi-trillions down. And then Walter Bloomberg tweeted, Trump is considering a 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except China. He tweeted it all caps with an alarm emoji. In other times, perhaps someone just ignores this is not real. But because it came from Walter Bloomberg with a lot of followers and a verified check, it started getting picked up. until eventually on NBC, they were saying they have unconfirmed but seemingly real reports that Trump was pausing the tariffs. And then the stocks went dramatically green. The stock market rallied like $2.5 trillion in 10 minutes. Again, the level of swings we're seeing have been never before seen like this in my entire life. Then, of course, less than 15 minutes after that, again, all of this took place between 10 and 11 a.m. this morning. The Trump internal team was saying, hey, no, we're not pausing. It's fake news. And once the market issued that, it crashed $3 trillion. We had super deep, massive rise, then a crash again, then a small rise, and then just chopped around for the rest of the day. And in fact, shockingly, it ended up only barely down. I mean, it's still down, but had this continued, we might have a much deeper, like Walter Bloomberg's tweet, despite being disproven, may have actually slowed the turn today. Like it stopped the panic selling. After hours, it's up. Now, again, it may seem like this is kind of a small thing, right? It's kind of a random thing, not worth bringing up, but it's actually pretty fascinating because we have rarely seen the ability for a unverified fake post to move trillions of dollars of value so quickly. We are in an era where I think what's more important than just the fake post is how quickly markets can move in general. People have worked on Wall Street for decades. We're noting that it felt swifter than anything they ever experienced, even during COVID and the financial crisis. The idea is that because we have algorithms now, because we have high frequency trading, because everybody's on edge, the ability for the market to change dramatically, instantly, is getting kind of spooky. And what's interesting is that for a lot of people, especially like Wall Street bets people or even some of my chatters, the upside risk is just as scary because we had a lot of people, as I mentioned on Sunday or on Saturday. I got this crazy idea there's gonna be a bounce on Monday though, just because so many people are buying puts. I think it's just gonna bounce just to f them over. And that's exactly what it did. Everybody who jumped on the fucking buy puts train on Wall Street bets all got fucking cooked. This guy's down 31% on his fucking $30,000 of puts he bought. Even though the market is like in a bad spot, even though the tariffs are not being digested well, every time you think you've got it figured out and you're doing what everyone else is doing, you're probably gonna get cooked. Short-term predicting the market's impossible. All this chaos, ups and downs, might cause you to panic. But our fearless leader has some words for you. The United States has a chance to do something we should have done decades ago. Don't be weak. Don't be stupid. Don't be a panicking. That's the new party based on weak and stupid people, okay? Be an American. Don't be a panicking. Be strong, courageous, and patient, and greatness will be the result. It's not just an American party that is that panicking. Panicking is a global party because it turns out everybody's panicking. The panicking party's winning in Germany and China and the UK and Canada, the United States, and Japan. Every stock market is down because of these rising trade tensions, although us and Japan are by far taking the biggest beating. But if you're willing to stay safe, you should not be a panicking, according to Donald Trump. This will all bounce back. Now, the biggest story there is not between these two countries, though. It's between these two. Again, the largest tariffs that the U.S. levied were on China. And that is, the geostrategic rival. That is where the biggest tensions are rising. And the rest of the world is kind of watching to see how this U.S.-China thing breaks down. And breakdown it has. The cracks are beginning to show and, in fact, widen. A U.S.-China trade war is getting even uglier. So, as you guys know, Donald Trump on Liberation Day, the 5th, walked out with the poster, and at the top was China, big tariffs on China. In response, as what happens in trade wars, China issued retaliatory tariffs of 34%. The US put out 34%, China added new 34% tariffs. In response, Donald Trump is now threatening an additional 50% tariff if they do the retaliatory tariffs. So a counter to the counter. Now, at that point, if we add an additional 50%, it's essentially impossible for any good to be traded between the China and the United States. If this trade war hits the point where these two countries are talking about, if Xi Jinping does a 34% and we add 50%, the entire trade history of the United States and China will be ended. It'll be a complete cutoff. And China, in response to this, said, we will fight to the end. So we're really getting the 1930s again, bro. We are getting trade wars into double downs into escalation. At no point is anyone trying to figure out some kind of reasonable solution. But what's funny is how it feels a little bit like the ideals of both sides have been somewhat flipped. in that this, pro-government intervention, pro-protectionism has become Donald Trump's calling card. Our fearless leader, Glorious LB, you have people saying, keep an eye out on American companies raising prices. Report them to the government if they do. It's like it's becoming this weird Maoist Republican search, anti-business. And on the flip side, we have one of the craziest things I've seen in my entire life. We have the Chinese government, official Chinese embassy of the United States, tweeting Ronald Reagan clips.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity.
Why does this feel like AI? Because your brain is cooked. This is a fucking real clip. Anyway, he did seem to describe exactly what's happening. It's funny to have Ronald Reagan, the voice of China's side of the argument 30 years later, 50 years later. It's crazy, dude. It's such a wild fucking world.